Hi everyone, it's Bella with Belita's Nails, and I'm going to be going over a brief history of how nail salons and how the nail industry became heavily dominated by the Vietnamese community. And just as a little sidebar, I got a little microphone, so I'm really excited to see how this plays out. Um, just feel a little professional right now, okay? I feel fancy, I feel professional. But anyways, so I wanted to discuss this topic because as a nail tech myself, this has always intrigued me. And even before I was a nail tech, just seeing how heavily dominated the nail community is with Vietnamese nail techs. And I'm sure many like myself have always questioned like how did it become so heavily populated and how did it come to be? A few points I'm going to go over is how it all started, how it spread so quickly, and what it is that's going on now, and also what issues the Vietnamese community faces to this day. I also think it's very important as a nail tech, even if you aren't Vietnamese, even if this is just a hobby or just an interest that you have, or if this is your full-fledged career, I think it's very important to know where your roots come from and to understand how this industry came to flourish the way that it is now, because in a sense they paved the way for us to be able to have this success, for this service to be such a huge success and at such a high demand even 50 years later. So we're going to get into that and how everything came to be. So all of this started around 1975 after the Vietnam War. A lot of Vietnamese people were coming to the US as immigrants and joining these refugee camps as a way to survive and help their family and find other means of income and ways to support their family back at home in Vietnam. Now, there was an actress named Tippi Hedren who used to volunteer at the Vietnamese refugee camps, and she always had her nails well manicured. She had a Vietnamese manicurist who did her nails all the time, and all of the women there were always looking at her nails and admiring her nails and how well she kept them done, and were always very intrigued by how they looked and how beautiful they were. She flew in, I think, about 20 other women from Vietnam so that her nail tech could train them and teach them the skills of manicuring. That way they can learn and be a part of the industry and help their family back at home. So all these women learned about the manicuring business, and they went on to open up the first Vietnamese owned nail salon in the US. They started teaching classes in full Vietnamese. That way other Vietnamese people could run these courses, take the exams, and get their licensing within the amount of time that they needed, and continue on that tradition of learning the nail services and sending money back home for their family. And now, because of how popular this grew, there was a huge influx of Vietnamese people coming into the US constantly, and again, looking for that better opportunity for their family, working on their licenses and sending money back home and learning these techniques and opening up new salons. A lot of people ended up moving to different states just depending on what they could afford and opening up nail salons in those other states. So there was a huge influx of nail salons and nail services, and most of them, the majority of them, were owned by Vietnamese people. So now fast forwarding to the 80s and the 90s, these salons, since they were at such a high surplus, they were offering their services at a very low price. And those low prices really attracted a lot of customers because this was a beauty service that was easily accessible by a lot of people, and you didn't have to pay a lot to get really well manicured hands and feet. And now, because of these low prices, it increased the demand just so much more, to where these nail salons were being pumped out like crazy. And now, present day, there's such a huge surplus of nail salons. In 2015, there were 130,000 nail salons in the US alone, and over 50% of them were Vietnamese owned. And if you narrow that down even further to just California, over 80% of them were Vietnamese owned. So they were huge. It became a booming business, and it's the footprints of what led up to today. Now there's a nail salon pretty much at every block, at every corner in every city. There is some sort of nail salon in the area. And 8, 9 times out of 10, it's Vietnamese owned, or there are a bunch of Vietnamese employees in those nail salons. And unfortunately, it isn't all positive because of human trafficking and labor trafficking that was happening within these nail salons. A lot of these migrants in Vietnam were coming from poor areas trying to find a better life and better career in the US, following the footsteps of other people in their families and in their communities. But unfortunately, they were being scammed and also trafficked. They would hire people to get them into the US, and in exchange for that, they would quote them at a really high price for sending them in. So either they would have to pay all that money or they would have to work to pay it off. So they would give them very little training, force them into the nail salon, and have them work crazy, inhumane hours, tiring them out, wearing them out, but they needed to pay off their debt to the people that were bringing them in. So they were put in a very vulnerable position. They don't speak English, they don't have the proper legal documentation to be in the US or to be working, and they were put under this pressure to have to make this quota. So they were working day in and day out, and they felt like they had no out of it. And unfortunately, that is the ugly reality of the nail industry. And these quotas could be as high as $20,000, $30,000, and they had no way of paying it off except by working and making that up. And when you think about it, nail salons are kind of the perfect cover up for labor trafficking like this, because a lot of those establishments are unlicensed if they are funded by human traffickers, and they are cash flow businesses. So they fall under the radar of the cosmetology board and they can go undetected, which means they can hire people without proper training, and sometimes they're underage or working these long crazy hours, and there is no supervision and regulation. So these people are being able to be exploited because of this. And now it's not always the case. I'm not generalizing this for all Vietnamese owned nail salons or all Asian owned nail salons. This is not the case for every single one, but it is a huge reality that we need to be aware of as customers and as people in general walking our day-to-day lives. So now this has led to another issue, which is improper techniques and improperly done services when attending clients at the nail salon. For as long as I can remember, I've had people who go to these local shops because they are so cheap and getting poorly done services. I've seen their nail beds have so much damage to them. I've seen so many improper techniques and improper ingredients used in their products that have caused even more damage to these clients. And again, this is not every single Asian-owned nail salon, but when you tie in human trafficking along with these improper techniques, there is a correlation. They're not going to be doing the best job if they don't have the proper training, and their only goal in mind is to pay off their debt and help supply money and food and everything for their family back at home. And it's not a good thing to be funding this, because it's just allowing these people to get away with it more and more. And again, I have to reiterate this does not apply to every single Asian-owned nail salon. But since 2017, over 550 Vietnamese people have been identified as victims of human trafficking in the nail industry. So this is a huge issue, and this was in the UK alone. So this is not even counting the United States. It is a very real issue, and it is happening every single day. So now what can you do to help? You as a consumer, you as a nail tech, what can you do to help this issue? First, it comes to selecting the nail salon that you are attending. You need to keep a few things in mind, such as pricing. Does the pricing seem too good to be true? I know nail services have gotten pretty expensive, but also the cost of living and everything else has gotten pretty expensive. So clearly, things like that, non-essential services, are going to go up in price because they need to adjust for inflation. So if you're still seeing $20 full sets, $25 full sets, maybe think about why those prices are so low. Maybe the quality of their products isn't that good. Maybe they're not taking good care of your natural nails. You have to think about the pricing and think about the correlation of the service itself. If you don't see any licenses present, and that is establishment license and personal licenses. By the state of California, at least, every nail technician should have their license present and clearly visible for everyone to see. So like mine is right back there behind me. I'm not hiding it. Everyone can see it when they come in. It is clearly displayed as my California license. Now, if each person doesn't have their own license, or I've heard that they even have a copy of the same license at every station, you need to make sure that it is real and accurate. You also need to think of the age of these people. Do they seem too young to be working at a nail salon? Like very young to where they wouldn't be able to get their license in your state. Again, I don't know about other states, but for California, you have to be at least 17 to get your California license. So if the person doing your nails doesn't look at least 17, it could be a warning sign that it might be labor trafficking. If you do see any of these warning signs at a nail salon, you can report it to the human trafficking hotline, and I will leave that in this video. Now, there was one more thing I wanted to address to everybody, and I want to preface this by saying I am not Vietnamese. I am not remotely Vietnamese. No one in my family, at least that I know of, isn't Vietnamese. So I know I do not have complete authority to speak on this. I am just speaking on what I have seen and what I think needs to change on our perspective of Vietnamese women and people in the nail industry. I've seen a lot of racism when it comes to talking about Vietnamese people, and not just clients, but also other nail techs. I've just heard it from everyone and everywhere. So one thing I have noticed, mainly in the Spanish-speaking community, the Latino community, is when referring to Vietnamese people in these nail salons, is calling them chinitas or chinitos. And for those of you who don't speak Spanish, that means Chinese ladies or Chinese people. And it's used in a very mocking and derogatory term because, one, they're not Chinese. For the most part, I can guarantee you the majority of them are not Chinese. They're Vietnamese people, which is an entirely different country. And it's rude and disrespectful to be mislabeling somebody. And it's not just mistaking, oh, they're Chinese. It's used in a derogatory way, and you should have respect when referring to anybody. And this is not a new term. This has been thrown around forever, and I hear it from everybody. And it just makes me very uncomfortable because I know I am not Vietnamese, so I cannot speak up for Vietnamese people and what they think and feel and experience. But it's something that I've heard in my own community that I just don't think is okay. I know a lot of people find it hard to relate to things, especially when they can't put themselves in other people's shoes. There are a lot of parallels when it comes to the Latino immigrant experience and the Vietnamese immigrant experience. They're both fleeing probably impoverished areas, going to the United States, trying to find a better opportunity to work hard and send money back to their family. I know that has happened a lot in my family, and I've heard countless stories of other Mexicans specifically talking about their experience coming to the US and trying to provide for their kids, for their parents, for their siblings. And that's exactly what's been going on with Vietnamese people immigrating to the US and joining the nail industry, is the same motives. In Mexico, at least, they pay what they call coyotes to cross them over to the border. And it's dangerous because, one, they ask for a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars. And it's super dangerous because sometimes they won't even bring you over. They'll scam you, take your money, and leave you for dead. And I've heard stories like that. It's very unfair. It's very unfortunate. And you're running that risk of giving all the money that you have, all the money that you've built up for to try and cross over to the US, paying this person and trusting this person to get you there safely. Vietnamese people were doing the same thing, trusting people with their money or paying them off with their hard labor. And now a big trope for specifically Mexican people is working in the fields and working in construction because you don't need to know English, you don't need to have documentation to be working these jobs, and you're getting paid dirt money. You're not getting paid very much, but you're taking what you can and working these hard, long hours, breaking your back, and doing that all as a sacrifice for yourself and your family. Same thing with people in the nail industry. Not everybody wants to be scrubbing people's feet and servicing people who might be racist or rude to them, but they do it because they have to. They feel no other way to make this living. So I'm speaking to my Latino community when I'm talking about this, is think about your own struggles and your own family struggles. When you think about an Asian person in the nail salon, a Vietnamese person, think about how similar your struggles are. And as minorities, we should be lifting each other up and empowering each other when working here, because it is difficult in the US. I was very fortunate to be born here, and I don't take that for granted, but I see how my dad has struggled, and I can't even imagine how difficult and how frustrating and how much disrespect he has endured. So why, as a Mexican person, would you be giving back that same negative energy to someone else trying to do the same? So I wanted to take this time just to talk about this and educate the nail community and educate the Latino community specifically, just so that we can have a better understanding of where this comes from and how historic this is. This is huge. And just to make things a better place, keep things positive, and help each other out. So I understand this was a more serious topic, but I am dedicating my page to pretty much everything education when it comes to nails, and I appreciate the time that you're taking to listen to this. And share this with your friends, share this with your family. I would love for this message to be spread. So now, if you have any questions, any comments, I would love to hear them. If you're someone who is Vietnamese who works in a nail salon, or if you have family who does, I would love to hear your experience and give you a platform to share this on. I know I don't have a huge platform right now, but I haven't heard anybody talk on this subject, and I think it's really important for us to all acknowledge it. So thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.